In the Santa Clarita Valley, there's one name that really stands out above all others. It's a town, it's a hospital, it's a couple of theaters, it's roads, it's a new development that's coming west of I-5 one day, maybe. I call this a tale of two Newhalls. I'm Leon Warden, and this is Legacy, Santa Clarita's Living History, brought to you by the Santa Clarita Valley Historical Society and SCV-TV. Tonight we've got two Newhalls right here in studio with us. I'd like to welcome Skip and his brother Tony to the show.
Nice to be here.
Now, Skip, you're the older brother, right?
Yes, I am.
So, did he pick on you while you were growing up?
Always.
Yes.
Yeah.
Terrible.
I can somehow imagine that. Now, there's a third brother too, and that's
John.
That's John, and he's your twin, right?
Yep.
A fraternal twin.
Fraternal twin.
So it doesn't look like you don't look like each other.
At all. No.
Okay. And he lives up in the Bay Area.
That's right.
You grew up there, right?
That's right.
Okay. And where?
Berkeley.
In Berkeley.
Born in San Francisco and raised in Berkeley until they went away to college.
Okay. When were you born?
1938, almost 80 years
38.
ago.
Wow. You came along when?
1941.
41. Okay. And so you're up in the Bay Area. Now, of course, it was quite a bit later than that your father, Scott, and mother, Ruth, came to the Santa Clarita Valley and ended up buying the Signal newspaper. They owned it for 15 years and ran it for 25 years. And, really they had a lot to do with the formation of the city of Santa Clarita, among a lot of other things, and building public opinion for that sort of thing. So they were influential. But there's another Newhall that goes back a little farther, back to the 1800s, who, let me put it this way: how old were you when you realized that this, let's see, it would be your great-great-grandfather, Henry Mayo Newhall, was some influential guy that owned 5 or 6 ranches throughout California, including most of the Santa Clarita Valley?
Oh, early teens, I guess.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
And did it have I don't know, how did it make you feel?
Well, when I first heard it, it made me feel very important. But then I realized later on that I'm not important. It was Henry Mayo that was, and that I grew up and it took care of that.
Mm-hmm. Tony, where did your travels in life take you as a young person?
Well, I grew up in Berkeley, where we lived, and I was educated, and I went to a prep school back east in Massachusetts during my 9th to 12th grades. Mm-hmm. And then I came west after that to Stanford for 4 years.
Stanford? What did you study at Stanford?
Economics.
And that was kind of the family school, right?
In a way. My parents didn't go there, and some relatives went there. Mm-hmm. And the founders of the university were all of the same generation as Henry Mayo Newhall, my great-great-grandfather. And
they were all kind of in the railroads.
That's right.
Yeah.
But Henry himself never went to college and wasn't educated at college.
All right.
And when it came in the early 60s, mid-60s, when I was graduating, mm-hmm. Sergeant Shriver, President Kennedy's brother, paid a visit to the campus and was recruiting people for the Peace Corps, this group that started out in 1961. And I said, hey, that sounds interesting, and it allowed one to travel. So I joined the Peace Corps and spent 2 years in Peru, in South America.
That's Peru and not Piru.
Yeah. And not Piru, yeah.
Right. It's Peru.
Went to Piru by way of Peru. Yeah, I like that. That's good. Economics attracted you. Mm-hmm. You went in a different direction, Scott.
That's right.
I know you ended up at JPL.
Well, I graduated from Stanford in math and physics.
You also were Stanford, okay.
Oh, yes. And then I went to JPL. JPL, yes, but I took some time off to go to Caltech and get a doctorate in applied mathematics. Okay. And then went back to JPL and was there for 36 years.
Now, you once gave me your business card, and I will never forget it. I forget a lot, but I don't forget this. It said you are a lunar laser ranger.
Well, that was my job at the time, lunar laser ranger.
What is a lunar
Well,
laser
to translate that, when you range to something in astronomy talk, you were measuring its distance. So when the Apollo astronauts went to the moon in 1969 and later missions, mm-hmm. they put these elaborate reflectors on the moon, right, by the spacecraft. Mm-hmm. And they were passive, no batteries or anything. And then lasers from Texas and France were able to, a la sounding or sonar, but with laser beams, shine a light at the moon, hit the reflector, and get the return bounce. The elapsed time told us how far away the moon was at every point in its orbit and every possible orientation it could have in the sky. And they were accurate to about 1 centimeter, which is amazing over that distance.
You know, I gotta say, I guessed correctly. I figured that lunar laser ranger, you're sitting in some little room constantly measuring the distance of the moon from the Earth. Is that an all-day job? I mean, do you do that?
Well, I wasn't the ranger itself, if you want to use the term. In other words, the technician doing it. My job was to take the data, analyze it, and use it to establish where all the planets are in the solar system to very high accuracy. And that meant that the spacecraft that went there later, like to the unmanned spacecraft that went to everywhere, they knew where the planets were to within, a quarter of a mile or so, which is incredible accuracy.
You know, I had somebody did a show with somebody once where he was explaining. He's one of the guys who, well, he's the guy who figures out the navigation for some of the things that we've been sending to Mars lately, and he makes it sound so very simple, when in fact it seems so complex to somebody like me. How do you target Mars with that kind of accuracy? And I guess what you did is a component of that.
Oh yes, we had to know where Mars was to within really 100 meters or better, 50 meters. And once you know it that accurately, you almost don't have to target that accurately. If you missed your target on Mars by 150 feet, you could walk over to it.
So what's it like when your big brother is the rocket scientist in the family?
I was pretty impressed with that when he was doing that. That was in graduate school he was doing. Well, I was an undergraduate there. And he knew always growing up, he was into science and knew things like that. Very impressive, which is probably why I switched to economics.
Well, my dad was an engineer, and I never particularly had an aptitude for math. And when I was in school, I kind of followed my mom's direction. She was more into like the English and that kind of thing, and writing. And you ended up in a career that involved writing. How? Why'd you go that direction?
That was not part of a plan. I went through some, after I came home from the Peace Corps.
You still like the numbers, huh?
Oh, yeah. I went to graduate school, which I didn't particularly like, and I dropped out, took a job with a cousin of mine, and we didn't get along that well, so I left that. And my father had already bought the Signal in Southern California, and my twin brother, John, worked there as the editor or the general manager at the time. And that sounded interesting, and I didn't know what to do, what direction my life. So my dad basically talked me into coming down and giving newspaper business a try.
Okay.
Yeah.
And previous, I guess he bought it in '63.
That's right.
And before that, he was the editor of the San Francisco Chronicle. And when did he become editor of the Chronicle?
When he officially became editor of the Chronicle? Probably, well, he was...
1971.
Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was that late?
Yeah, it was, yeah. But before that, he held a job that was very similar to being editor.
Like executive editor or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
And operations manager and things like that.
Okay, and so you were, I guess you were out of the house by then, by that time. Okay. What was your first, when did you first come to the Santa Clarita Valley?
When did I first
Who was here first? Who first laid eyes on the Santa Clarita Valley of you two?
Well, it was I. I got here in November, early November, like November 4th of 1949. And I was there because my parents made a trip down from Berkeley to see somebody here, and they asked me if I wanted to come along. Well, I got here, very hot Santa Ana day, just like we've had lately. And right in the middle of walking around the sidewalks, a train came by, a Southern Pacific train. And that was in the years when the train tracks went right by Main Street, or in the big lot over there, which is now, I guess, the corner of 13th Street and Lyons Avenue, or Lyons Avenue and Railroad, something like that. And it was a very hot, dry day, and a spark got away from the train and started a big fire.
Really?
Yeah, and the train kept going and stopped. And fire department had to come along and put it out. So that's my first memory of Newhall, was putting out a grass fire.
Putting out a grass fire, cool. Tony, when were you first here?
I was first here probably, after that, it was at about in the mid-50s. We had a connection with the Newhall Land and Farming Company, which was then, for a while, located in San Francisco. And they built a small house down here for Newhall family members who wanted to come and visit and stay.
Where was that?
Get to know the ranch. It's out in the orchards between here and Piru, actually quite close to Piru, not too far from Camulos, where it used to be all those orange orchards.
Is that house still standing?
The house is still standing, but I think that one of the employees uses it as a residence.
So it's still out there off of 126?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
really?
exactly. It's not just south of 126. It's not palatial. It's very small. And
Oh, is it? Of course, the ranch headquarters were there off of 126 at Henry Mayo Drive.
That's right. That's right.
Kind of about where the new Commerce Center off ramp off of 126
That's
now is.
That's right.
And I know that there are some old, not that old, but old 40s buildings out there from the late 40s. And so is it like in there with those ranch buildings, or is it somewhere
Well,
else?
it was sort of out in the orchard, this particular house.
Okay.
And it was sort of a little perk that you wanted to get family members to know about what the company was doing, and you could come down and have a free stay. You know, you booked the time. And it was a way to come down here. But we didn't spend much time in Newhall, downtown Newhall itself.
I imagine there was a whole lot to do for
Yeah, there wasn't, no. It was
young
a
person
very
who wants
slow-
to...
And we remember that we knew that the Saugus Drag Strip ran up the road there in Soledad Canyon. In fact, Skip went up there and raced his car in it in the 50s.
Not when I was 11, you
Yeah.
understand.
No. This
About
this
10
is-
years after that.
This when we were young teens.
Yeah.
And so, and we always thought it was kind of novel to have a little town named Newhall near us there. It was, not many families have something like that, but we didn't know too much about it. And of course, Skip made up stories for our other cousins who didn't know the area of what it was like to visit here.
Really? What do you mean? What'd you tell me?
Well, there was a Rexall store down the corner of what is now Market Street, I think.
It's Ralph Williams.
That's a drugstore.
Yeah, and I went in there, and I got a chocolate sundae. It was okay. You could do that in drugstores those days. And I went back up north, and I have some cousins, Henry Newhall and his sister Toppy. And I said, I went into the drugstore and I ordered a chocolate sundae, and I told them that my last name was Newhall. And then I said, Henry and Toppy, they gave me that chocolate sundae for free.
Yeah, sure they did.
Which was totally fabricated. And from that day to this, they still remember that. They say, I'm still waiting for that free chocolate sundae.
That's funny. So you came back, and tell me about the Saugus, I guess at Benelli Stadium at the time.
No, two separate things.
Yeah.
Oh.
There was the Speedway and the drag strip. The drag strip is Six's drag strip up in
Oh, the
North
6S,
Oaks.
okay.
Yeah.
So out there on what is now, I think it's Pleasantdale
You're
Street,
right.
between Camp Plenty and White's Canyon Road.
Yeah.
That was the old airstrip.
That's right.
I guess it was also a drag strip.
That's
Is that
right. It
What,
was
what do you,
served as
what do you
both.
remember about that? I never saw it. What do you remember?
I was there once at night. I had a Mercury that I thought was souped up and the hottest thing around. So another guy showed up just out of the blue with his, said, you want to race this? Yeah. So we both jumped off, and he just ran the pants off of me, of course. And that's my only experience of drag racing, and I lost badly. But I'm told that there's a Tips restaurant right above that, and it was popular for people to have dinner there and eat out on the porch and look down and watch the drag strip.
Tip Sierra, yeah.
Okay. How many people were out there at that time? What was just on a Friday or Saturday night?
No,
or
they were just
was
stray
great.
teenagers
Yeah.
Okay.
that showed up. I think maybe 20 of them.
And so was it still? It was still being used as a.
Oh
as
yeah,
an
they
airport?
were formal drag races held there.
Yeah.
But it was. Tell me about that.
Oh, I was just going to say that, the night I was out there with that abortive run, they didn't lock gates or anything, but it was not a regular drag race. It was just, pick up if guys came in.
Yeah.
The more formal races, I don't know much about.
So about what year would this have been?
About 57, wasn't it?
Yeah, I would say so.
So it was still being used as an airport.
Yeah,
I think so,
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's move it up a little bit. You came here. You said when?
Me?
Yeah.
I came here in the mid-'60s. I came in and visited John just before I went in the Peace Corps to Peru. And he had taken over as a job at the Signal and gave me a tour, and we drove around the valley. And it seemed a little primitive to me. This is before I went to Peru. And then...
And of course, the Signal was over there on what is now,
Sixth
Street.
Sixth Street.
Right off of
just
Main
just
Street.
off what was, right, just off Main Street, right. And And so he worked there while I was overseas. And then I came back and I went to graduate school and then dropped out. But meanwhile, John was there. John, after graduating from college, John came directly down here to take a position at the Signal. So that was June of 1964.
What was the Signal like back then? I mean, did everybody in town read it? You know, I mean, how many people were in town in 1964?
It was not the only newspaper in town, but it was the main newspaper in town. And it was a small weekly, regular broadsheet. And at the masthead, it had a picture, a little logo, a sort of an oil derrick and a cow, I remember. I think the Trublets had put that in there, the previous owners. And Scott said, we have to change that. And he came up with this flashy eagle logo with "Vigilance Forever" written over it. And that became the Signal motto for a while. And it was just a weekly until 65. Mid to late 65, they made it a bi-weekly. Instead of every Thursday, it was Thursday and Sunday. And then about a year later, they made it thrice weekly, which was Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, for competitive reasons. There was some San Fernando Valley newspaper trying to break in here.
Okay.
But in the meantime, there was another newspaper in town, the Santa Clarita Sentinel, owned by Art Evans. Yeah. And Scott did not even know the existence of that other newspaper until he bought this paper. They never told him there was a rival paper.
Oh.
Yeah, he was a little embittered about that.
Well, I think it was about the same time that Scott bought it in '63 that Art Evans started that Sentinel. I think
That's
it was probably right about the same time. And of course, Art Evans, you know, to the extent he's famous for coining the term canyon country.
That's right.
In 1963. It took a while to catch on.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a rivalry, huh?
Yeah, and I think he also pushed the name Santa Clarita. That's why the Signal never took much fondly to that name of Santa Clarita.
Well, Bill Bonelli named his housing tract Santa Clarita in 1947.
That's right.
So,
He initiated it. Yeah.
tell me about how that rivalry between the Signal and the Sentinel ended.
Yeah. Well, it was bitter for quite a while. And in fact, Scott got so sick of the way that Art Evans was treating him in his own paper, calling names of the Signal, that he challenged him to a duel. He said, "You want to be an old town Western newspaper? Let's settle it old town Western style." And he challenged him to a duel out under the Valley Federal clock at noon on a given day. Yeah. And not a gun duel, a duel of words. He challenged him to come out and to repeat what he had said in print. Yeah.
Repeat it to his face, huh?
And so John went out there, and Scott went out there, and a bunch of people in town, you know, flocked out there just to see what was going to go on. But one person did not show up, and that was Art Evans.
Oh, really? Okay.
So they never faced each other.
I wasn't aware of that.
And then a few weeks later, a very short time later, Art advertised, I think, his paper for sale and found no buyer and folded it
And
up.
it went away.
Yeah. I think that was late 65.
I know for a fact, Skip, that you were here. If that was 65, I know that you were here in 66.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me about this event that I know that I want you to tell us about.
The Ku Klux Klan rally. They had the KKK, decided off of Solidite Canyon Road, down in the creek bed, to hold a rally and to extol the virtues and the supremacy of the white race. And they had all these sort of, I would think, lower level people, lowlifes, that you can find whose outlook was not charitable toward the black people and toward anybody else who was not sort of real, true, pure-blooded white American. And that's their description of it. And they had this rally, and there weren't very many of them. There were around, I'd say, 25 or 30, mostly transplanted from places like Alabama.
Seems like a lot to me, but okay.
Well,
especially in a town of what, a couple thousand people, right?
Well, then a lot of people from here showed up because of the publicity that the Signal gave it. And there were more sheriffs there than there were.
People showing up in favor of it, or
no, out of curiosity. I went there just out of curiosity, because I just couldn't believe that something as bad, really unattractive, as the KKK would think that they might get a foothold here. But I guess they did. They thought they did, and they came out. And the amazing thing is, there were far more sheriffs at that gathering than KKK members and audience combined. They were everywhere. Really? They were on the hilltops. They were, some were plainclothes in the audience. They were flying helicopters over it. And there was no physical altercation at all. Some words, yes, but no physical altercation. And there were a couple of reporters from the San Francisco Chronicle came down. One of them was an old-time street fighter, and he stood around to be sure that everybody was well behaved. And you know, we had, I said a few words, but nothing bad happened.
The story is that you and your dad ran the KKK out of town. Is that wrong?
Well, how would you run them out? If anybody ran them out of town, it would have been Scott and the newspaper. No, I had nothing to do with that. As I said, I got into that verbal discussion with them, shall we say? But that was all. Nothing.
I could almost picture you trying to have an intellectual discussion with them.
Well,
why Saugus?
that's a good question. I never knew, except that we were this is 50 years ago. We were sort of isolated. We didn't have Santa Clarita. We didn't have Valencia or any of the nice towns that we have now up here. It was isolated, and I guess word somehow got to Alabama, or who knows if it was Alabama, but KKK country, that here would be a fertile picking ground. It's almost all white population here. Why don't we go up and get them on our side? I think that was the mentality they had. They realized when they got here that, oop, it's not going to work. But they went through their show anyway.
Well, you know, this is just coming out of the Civil Rights era, or it's at the height of the Civil Rights era.
Yeah,
You
sure.
get the '64 Civil Rights Act and all that kind of stuff. And so, was it just a one-time thing?
Yeah.
That it just came and went?
Yeah, came and went, and never a hint of it thereafter.
Okay. What was your view of it from the newspaper side of things? I mean, how?
Okay, well, I wasn't on the newspaper yet,
Right.
but I was there, you know, with my family who was, and we had heard that they tried to hold, they picked out various spots in Southern California to hold a rally, but they had to get a permit, or at least a place that would be safer, allow them to have the rally, and the Saugus. Soledad Canyon was one of the few places they actually got the landowner's permission and to get a permit to hold the rally there. And the police, of course, were notified about it. And we were all shocked. We were kind of stunned and blindsided the fact that why would the KKK come here? So that's what made it a big news story.
When you look at, you know, when you came here to work at the Signal, when was that?
Officially 68, early 68.
68. Okay, I didn't even realize it was quite that early. I thought it was just a little bit later than that. How do you think people behave differently, I guess is what I'm trying to say, back then versus today?
It was a different time period. And, you know, the 60s was a time period where there was explosive confrontation on races and also political events and the Vietnam War and things like that. And you saw that in the cities like up in Berkeley and San Francisco and even parts of LA, but you didn't see it out here as much. This was the calm outback, sort of. And that's what astounded me when I first came here, is how everything was a little more primitive, noticeably, than in the urban areas that I've been used to. And it's mostly because they hadn't had the growth that they've had since. In the next two and a half decades, they had tremendous growth, and it changed things. And the building up of Valencia and homes and tracks attracted families and just more money, and it changed incredibly.
And of course, one of the things about Valencia was the idea of building a whole community, and not just physically, you know, houses and businesses and paseos and schools, but also building the fabric of the community and the nonprofits and that sort of thing. And I know that you had a little hand in that direction with respect to nonprofits here at an early time in Valencia history, if you want to call it that. Talk to me about the Boys Club, because it wasn't I guess it wasn't Boys and Girls Club yet.
No, it was the Newhall-Saugus Boys Club, as a matter of fact. And my brother John asked me if he wanted to become editor of the Signal shortly after I arrived in '68, and said, "Would you like to become general manager?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "I don't have any experience, but I'll give it a try." And I did. You know, running sort of the business side, seeing that the checks are paid and stuff, that people are paid. And with an office in the back we had at the Signal on 6th Street, he said, "You also have to take my position on several local boards and things." And one was the Newhall-Saugus Boys Club. Yeah. And he said, "Will you do it?" And I said, "I guess I'll attend the meetings." And I got to know people in the community in that endeavor. People like Dr. Jim Foster, very active in it, Larry Margolis and Herb Oberman, who were with the LA County DPSS, the Department of Social Services. And we got to know everyone. And people like Bobby Trueblood and ultimately Connie Worden. And it was just it was like a social a group that we got together, but it had a good intentions of building the club, and they built the club from the ground up. It was really neat. Their first job was to get more money, which they did by going to the United Way, and then by holding annual fundraisers like luau's and golf tournaments, and ultimately the Boys and Girls Club auction.
Yeah, where did the idea for the auction come from?
The idea for the auction came from, we were always looking for ways to raise money.
I mean, you're the guy who started the thing, or who's credited with starting the thing anyway.
I stole it fair and square, okay? I was watching KQED, is that San Francisco? Down here is KCET. Had an annual auction on the air. And I thought, what a neat thing, have these events. And then they put an ad in the New York magazine, I think it was, where they advertised a ride in the Goodyear blimp and some other lavish dinner that they would auction off. And I said, what if we could do that in our own community? And that's where it came from. And so we sold it to our board saying, don't go around and ask for money. Go around and say we don't want your money, but give us an experience. Like we went to our supervisor, Warren Dort. Would you donate a dinner with someone? And he said, well, sure, I'll give that a try. And things like that. And I said, we know the people that have the Piru mansion down the road here, and they ponied up a dinner. And things like that. It caught people's imagination.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you also got involved in a wine event, I think.
I did. It was the Santa Clarita Valley Wine Classic. And it was a fundraiser, ostensibly, for CalArts in town. But it really was for people to come and just have a glass or two of good wine. The wine was donated by various wineries and things like that. And it was a very, very popular social evening. And once one of our visitors one year was the old-time boxer Jerry Quarry. And so I talked with him for a while. And I said, I'll just keep this short. I said, Jerry, when you pick a fight with somebody and go into the ring, here's somebody, you have to sort of pull your punches because they might be just, off the street. I said, what happens if you get into somebody who used to be captain of a college boxing team? He said, oh, then I'd have to show him a thing or two. And that was my conversation with Jerry.
That's funny. We got to wrap it up. But anything else you want to throw out there? What do you want people to know about Tony and Skip Newhall as they go away?
I tell you, what I keep forgetting is all the growth and changes that we've seen over the past 50 years. I remember walking into the editorial department one day and saying to Ruth, who was the editor, I say, they're on the tops of my peeve list in this town is that darn traffic signal they put in on Lyons Avenue. And I forgot about that until years later. That was the installation of the first and only signal we had, which is about 1969, 1970.
And you didn't like that?
No, it slowed down traffic and slowed down the pace. And I couldn't believe that up till then there had been no signals from the freeway all through Lyons Avenue down to Newhall.
Put in the first one. What do you think about the traffic out here, Skip?
Well, we need a better
chance.
We need a better signal system. It's got to be state of the art, updating itself as it goes, where the traffic is heavy and where not, and so on. But that's a long sort of pet peeve of mine, and I can't say much more now in just a few seconds.
I knew you would want to throw that out.
All right.
Skip Newhall, Tony Newhall, thank you for joining us, and thank you for joining us on this edition of Legacies, Santa Clarita's Living History. We'll catch you next time.